"This house belongs to us," my in-laws declared when they moved in following my husband's funeral. Go! But I didn't know anything, so I just laughed at them. They gave me a wary look and insisted on an explanation. "Are you not aware?" I challenged them. "Actually, this house is already mine," and shared the wish Bradley had given me. They were surprised to hear this, and their faces went white. I'm 52 years old and work in a restaurant's kitchen. My name is Hazel Thompson. "Hazel, can you work overtime today?" "No, manager. I've already told you that I can't." "That's right. Her husband is still hospitalized, so we should have asked someone else to cover until he returns." "My apologies, Hazel. You can go home on time without any issues." People adore our restaurant, which is a well-known Chinese eatery in town that is renowned for its cost-performance ratio. The dishes are quite reasonably priced, which is why we have a lot of customers every day. Although I used to enjoy working overtime, I have been leaving work on time lately because my husband, Bradley, has been in the hospital due to severe cancer. After 30 years of marriage, he is 2 years older than me. However, this is the first time he has experienced such a severe illness. His physical strength quickly started to deteriorate after learning that the cancer, discovered during a health examination, had spread to other locations. It is regrettable. Working from home and staying at home all the time made me weaker. He worked from home as a freelance interior coordinator, utilizing just a PC to accomplish his task. I was able to work freely all day long and avoid doing housework because of him. But after he became unwell, I requested consideration at work and changed my working hours. I wake up early and leave early when business picks up at the shop. I have asked those around me to give me permission to care for him as much as possible. Everyone, I'm sorry for always causing trouble. What are you saying? Don't be so gloomy. It'll worry your husband. Really, just act cheerful and take good care of him. Don't worry, the manager will take care of everything if something happens. Who do you think we are? Laughed my colleagues, joking around. When I asked, everyone accepted without any complaints. Moreover, they even suggested I leave early. The manager was concerned about my financial loss and adjusted the shifts to create the current work schedule. I am grateful to be able to work in such a wonderful workplace. When peaceful days return, I intend to properly reciprocate. Thinking this, I expressed my gratitude to my colleagues and signed the attendance book. I quickly prepared and hurried to the hospital. "Ah, you must be Mrs. Thompson. The doctor just arrived and is talking with your husband." When I arrived at the hospital, a nurse noticed me and warmly greeted me. Upon her words, I quickly rushed to the hospital room and entered where Bradley was talking with the doctor. "Your wife has arrived." "Ah, you finished work? Thank you for your hard work." Bradley is older than me. Originally, he had a youthful face, and often people would think I was the older one, but since his cancer diagnosis, he seems to have aged rapidly. Now he might look older than his actual age. His face, now thin, lacks the liveliness it once had, and his smile is weak. "I won't be defeated by the illness," he initially said with a smile, but the body is honest. Contrary to his bravado, he is weakening day by day. "I was just explaining the details of your husband's condition." "How is my husband's condition, doctor?" "Please let me share the rest." Just as I was about to get information from the doctor, Bradley suddenly interrupted. At that moment, an ominous feeling brushed through my mind. The doctor seemed to sense something too, and quietly left the room with a nod. "Hey, Hazel, how much time have we spent together since we got married?" Bradley suddenly said while looking out the window. Worried about his condition, I answered hesitantly, 30 years. 30 years, huh? It felt long, but looking back, it was like a moment. "Stop it. It sounds like you're saying it's almost the end." "Maybe another half a year," Bradley murmured as he reminisced. His words sounded as if he had accepted the end of his life, and I hurriedly tried to stop him. However, he started talking over me, avoiding my gaze. Just hold on for another 6 months. Really? It might even be sooner. I know my body better than anyone. Bradley slightly smiled as he looked down. The moment I heard his words, my worst fears seemed to become reality, and tears started to fall. I'm sorry for making you sad. I promised when we got married I would never make you sad. Bradley noticed my tears, chuckled awkwardly, and gently wiped them away. Tears welled up in his eyes too, and seeing this made me cry even harder. With a trembling voice, I couldn't stop crying. I'll need to apologize to your parents when I get there. I'm truly sorry for making their daughter sad. Stop it. Once he was gone, I would be alone for the rest of my life. We used to laugh and talk about staying together until the last moment. When Bradley spoke as if he had given up all hope of living, I couldn't hide my anger. Don't talk like it's all decided. Don't say such sad things, Hazel. Nothing is decided yet. Medical science is advancing each day. Also, if we look at other hospitals, there might still be other possibilities. I'm going to pass on, Hazel. When I screamed, unable to accept reality, he gently held my hand and continued quietly. I'll be leaving this world soon. No, I absolutely hate that idea. Before I'm gone, I want to do everything I've wanted to do. I want to cherish every moment with you until the end. With that, Bradley began to talk about his plans for the coming days. I don't want to spend my remaining time in the hospital. I want to go home with you. And Hazel, I know you're busy with work, but could you take a few days off? I want to go on the trip we had planned before. I want to fulfill all your wishes, so please, Bradley said. Seeing his words and his posture, I painfully realized that this was not just a dream, but reality. I felt there was no more hope, accepting that fact. I respected his wishes, and holding back my tears, conveyed his intentions to his doctor. The doctor respected our decision and promptly arranged for his discharge. For safety, additional tests were conducted, and he was able to leave the hospital the next day. Thus, Bradley spent his last days in this hospital. Bradley, I came to visit. Hey, how are you feeling? Ready to go to the other world yet? Just kidding. Hazel, you're here too. I thought it was just Bradley. Sorry. Since we had some time before dinner, I decided to stay in the room as long as possible to be with him. Suddenly, Bradley's mother and his brother, Marcus, and Marcus's wife, Rita, came to visit. It's been a while, Marcus. Bradley's brother, Marcus, is 55 and works in construction, but often skips work and holds no position at his age. He just goes through the motions day after day. His wife, Rita, is 34 and beautiful, but her expression is stern, and her speech is rough. Her dominating attitude is notably different from the usual behavior towards others, and for some reason, it stands out to me. Despite being 74, his mother is very youthful and full of energy. However, her greed is clearly visible on her face. She loves Marcus abnormally and looks down on Bradley. I truly despise Bradley's family. Marcus always makes insensitive jokes, and Rita probably hates me as well. From the first time we met, she regarded me as an enemy and never misses a chance to make snide remarks. My mother-in-law doesn't treat us as humans and constantly irritates us. She sees Brad, sadly not as a son, but as a money tree. She makes financial demands as soon as we meet. Marcus has a big family, doesn't he? You two don't have kids, and both of you earn, so you must have some financial leeway. Could you provide a little support? This kind of monetary demand has become a norm. Marcus's family, including his mother, is a family of 9. After his previous wife ran away, he remarried while having 4 children. He has 2 children with Rita, and their household finances are extremely tight. They can't live on their income alone and are always asking us for financial help. What's with the crowd? What an attitude! Isn't it cold to treat your own mother like this? Bradley, take better care of your mom. She's been very lonely since your father died. In fact, his mother's odd behavior started after the death of her husband. He was a strict and rational person. When he was alive, she did not act the way she does now. The entire family was united and spent time together harmoniously, but after his death, it was as if all restraints were lifted, and she changed completely. Previously, Bradley's father would encourage her to be considerate towards us, but now it seems she has no reason to accept me. She started talking about money all the time with Bradley. Marcus had previously run away with another woman, and during that time, he was disowned by his own father. After my father-in-law's death, the disownment was lifted, and he returned home with his new wife, Rita. This town supports child rearing, but raising 6 children requires considerable economic strength, which is challenging. Bradley was always dumbfounded by their unrealistic ideas. This month is financially tough again. Could you give us a little support? What? Please stop. Bradley is already struggling so much. What are you thinking? Please be quiet. This is a family matter. That's right. Furious at my in-laws' irrational behavior, I couldn't help but yell. However, Marcus easily dismissed it. Next to him, Rita laughed mockingly, waving her hand as if shooing away a dog. Sorry, but we really can't afford to give you any money. Oh, that's troublesome. I thought you would figure something out. That's why I came all this way. Ah, what a useless son, my mother-in-law muttered under her breath, grumbling. I'm reaching my limit with these three's unreasonable behavior. So, what's the specific situation? How is the cancer progressing, and what about the prospects for discharge? Clearly, she was not concerned, given her greedy nature. She probably had some selfish plans in mind. He has 6 months to live. He's planning to be discharged tomorrow and spend his last days at home. Is that so? The moment they heard these words, their eyes lit up. Far from being shocked, their faces were filled with joy, which was unbelievable. Their unpleasant demeanor made me feel nauseous. Then we'll come to pick him up by car when he's discharged. He can't walk back, can he? There's no need for that. While Bradley responded calmly, his mother and the others spoke excitedly, unable to bear the scene any longer. I forcefully ejected them from the hospital room. What are you doing? They yelled. Please go home. I will handle the discharge preparations myself, and your presence is not needed. I never want to see you all again. What are you saying? As my in-laws tried to argue, I quickly dismissed them, slammed the door shut, and locked it. I immediately explained the situation to the hospital staff and had the nurses prohibit visits from anyone but myself to ensure my in-laws couldn't contact Bradley. I'm sorry, Hazel. I've caused you trouble. Why don't you stand up to them? They ridicule you and use you. I pressed him, my anger rising. Why should such undeserving people live at ease while someone like Bradley must suffer? It might seem irrational, but I felt I couldn't bear it unless I lashed out at someone. I still loved Bradley deeply and didn't want to accept that he would be gone. I didn't want to confront them and burden myself, so I was glad you spoke up clearly, Hazel. That's why I have a request for you. A request? Bradley then entrusted me with a significant task that was so unexpected I couldn't hide my surprise. On the spot, yet he was utterly serious, with a grave expression, he emphasized, Please, this is my first and last request. Understood. I promised to fulfill it. After that exchange, I took custody of a specific item from Bradley and went home for the day. The next day, before my in-laws arrived, I quickly helped Bradley to get discharged from the hospital. We returned home, but there was a lingering fear that his family might soon show up. Determined to protect Bradley from them, I decided to slightly alter his wish. Eventually, instead of staying at our home, I asked an acquaintance if we could live in their villa for a while. It's sad to leave our home, but as long as you are with me, anywhere is home. Bradley smiled shyly at that, and I couldn't help but blush. After explaining the situation at work, I took a long leave of absence. My wish was to be by Bradley's side until his last moments. With the help of friends, Bradley spent his remaining days quietly, and his end came peacefully. 6 months later, he quietly passed away. At the funeral, I saw my in-laws for the first time in a long while. I was on guard, expecting them to say something, but instead of showing sorrow, they just looked at me and smiled smugly. The moment I saw their unpleasant smiles, I felt a chill. What could this possibly mean? I wondered. Soon I would come to understand the meaning behind their laughter. After the funeral, as I was sorting through Bradley's belongings at home, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, there stood my mother-in-law and Marcus, laden with numerous bags. "We finally found you. Heard from the neighbors that you came back. What are those bags for?" I asked as she tried to enter the house while complaining. I stood firmly in the doorway, blocking their entry. Then Marcus glared at me annoyingly. "Stop blocking the way. Move aside." "I won't move. What's in those bags? And have you brought your kids too? What are you thinking?" Behind Marcus, his entire family was present. It was a confusing situation, but panicking would play right into their hands. Clearly, they had concocted some plan and had come to our house with it. Confronting them firmly, I stood my ground. Then my mother-in-law, with a mocking laugh, said something astonishing. "From today, this house is ours. You have to leave." Hearing her words, I was taken aback. My in-laws, all 9 of them, had audaciously planned to take over our home as their own. Faced with their unimaginable audacity, I was at first speechless and silent. My son's possessions naturally belong to his blood-related family, don't they? He has left this will for us, my mother-in-law said, showing me the will while laughing. However, upon hearing her words, I couldn't help but burst into laughter, overwhelmed by the absurdity of their actions. "What's so funny?" My reaction seemed to irritate them. Rita peeked out from behind Marcus, glaring at me angrily. Wiping the tears from my laughter, I faced their displeased looks and delivered a shocking truth. "Don't you know? Actually, this house is already mine." "What?" said my mother-in-law. "What?" echoed Marcus. My statement left them baffled and dumbfounded. Their clueless expressions brought another wave of laughter from me, but composing myself, I went to fetch some important documents from another room to deliver even more astonishing news. "As you can see, I am now officially the owner of this house." Bradley had already transferred the ownership to me while he was still alive. "What are you talking about?" my mother-in-law exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. She hastily snatched the documents from me and examined them closely with Marcus. "It's true, it's been changed to her name," they murmured in shock. The document was official, and the ownership was indisputably mine. As my claim was clearly proven true, Marcus and Rita raised their voices in protest. "What are you talking about? How come Bradley doesn't own the house anymore?" Unfazed by their shouts, I calmly continued. "He wanted to change the ownership to me before his discharge. He thought it would be more useful for the future if he transferred it to my name while he was still alive." At this point, my mother-in-law interrupted, thrusting her copy of the will at me. "This can't be." "Look, here is a will he wrote." The document she showed was indeed written in Bradley's handwriting, but there were no seals or signatures on it. It was merely a document and did not function as a legal will, which they seemed not to understand. Their ignorance only left me exasperated, and I sighed deeply. However, no matter how much I explained, they were unlikely to accept the truth. Anticipating the next developments, I asked them to wait a bit and called a lawyer for legal assistance. I appreciate your help. I apologize, but his family has come over concerning the will. Could you possibly come over urgently? Thank you. As I suddenly started making the call, Marcus stared at me suspiciously, wondering whom I was contacting. I offered no detailed explanation to him, but urged him to come inside first. I seated my mother-in-law and Marcus in the living room and told the children they could play freely in the bedroom. Soon, the house's chime rang, and I went to the entrance to greet the visitor. I then escorted the person I was speaking with on the phone into the living room. I apologize for the delay. As the suited man entered the room, Marcus and the others immediately became more cautious. They glared at him with hostility. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. This is Mr. Russell, the lawyer who has been helping us with Bradley's matters. Russell: I called you because my mother-in-law brought a will. A lawyer! Upon learning Russell's identity, my mother-in-law exclaimed in astonishment. I got acquainted with him through a friend of the owner of the villa we were renting, and he had been briefed on the matter. Although he was young, at 30 years old, causing Bradley and I to feel uneasy initially, he was reputed among his friends for his quick thinking and especially strong handling of family disputes. After a face-to-face meeting, we trusted him completely. Bradley and I had explained the entire situation regarding the inheritance and family troubles to Russell and formally hired him as our lawyer. My in-laws seemed completely unaware that Bradley had hired a lawyer. They looked astounded, as if they had not been informed at all. Marcus and the others were also wide-eyed and at a loss for words. Allow me to reintroduce myself. I am Russell. I am here at Bradley's request. I will be recording this conversation as legal evidence. Unlike Marcus, who dressed flamboyantly, Russell had a simple appearance with black, short-cut hair and clean, straightforward glasses. My mother-in-law seemed to forget why she came to the house as she was taken by Russell's presence. Russell greeted politely, prompting them to reflexively accept his business card. Seeing his business card and lawyer badge, my mother-in-law straightened her posture upon realizing he was a legitimate lawyer. Marcus and Rita also straightened up, showing tense expressions. Afterward, Russell and I sat on the sofa facing my in-laws to start the conversation. Russell expertly operated the voice recorder, and the discussion began. May I take a look at the will you have brought? Russell asked in a composed tone. Perhaps feeling somewhat intimidated by his question, my mother-in-law's hand trembled slightly as she handed over the will. She was probably worried about not being able to secure the inheritance without someone like a lawyer to back her up. It's difficult to maneuver words cunningly against an experienced lawyer. She seemed concerned that the proceedings might turn unfavorable for them. Regardless, Russell calmly read through the will. After finishing, he looked at me and nodded slightly. Thank you. I will return this to you now, he said, handing the will back to my mother-in-law with a polite smile. His reaction only fueled her anxiety further. Was that really Bradley's will? She asked. Yes, indeed. It appears to be Bradley's will, Russell confirmed. See, with this, the house becomes ours, she suddenly began to assert confidently. However, Russell promptly tempered her expectations by adding, That will is an older version, though. What do you mean? The mother-in-law exclaimed in surprise. It seems you did not catch that. Indeed, the will presented is Bradley's, but the date is old. The will that is officially recognized as valid is this more recent one, Russell clarified. He then pulled out a newer will from his bag. This will was more recent than the one my mother-in-law had, and it read, I leave all my assets to Hazel. The previous will I wrote for my mother is hereby revoked, and this document shall stand as my official will. What? Let me see that. Rita snatched the will from Russell to verify it herself. It had a more recent date, a seal, and even a fingerprint impression, and it stated that a lawyer had officially been commissioned, making it clear which will was valid. Rita and Marcus's faces turned pale as they realized the situation, and my mother-in-law could only quiver her lips in shock. So what is the effect of this will? Unfortunately, it is just a worthless piece of paper that can be... At that moment, Marcus furiously confronted his mother. Despite the lawyer's presence, he swiftly pressed her, accusing, "You said all the inheritance would be yours." Marcus's words were so fierce it almost seemed he was about to become physically aggressive. Rita tried to intervene, but Marcus's strength overwhelmed her attempts to calm him, and he continued to shout abusively at his own mother. My mother-in-law cowered under Marcus's angry voice. The scene was truly chaotic. Seeing this, I sternly glared at Marcus and spoke in a calm voice. "Please stop causing a disturbance in someone else's home. It's really troublesome." "What did you say?" Marcus retorted. "If you cause any more trouble here, Russell will confirm everything, and if necessary, we will consider taking legal action." The mention of Russell's name seemed to snap Marcus back to reality. He was facing a lawyer. No matter how much Marcus, who was not well versed in law, resisted, it was futile, and he nervously sat back down on the sofa. By the way, did Bradley truly write this will himself? I asked my mother-in-law amid the now silent room, as she claimed that Bradley willingly wrote the will during his hospital stay. I waited quietly for her to elaborate. "Yes, he did. Bradley wrote it for me while he was in the hospital," she said, unable to hide her irritation. "Really? Was Bradley happy to write it?" I probed further. Her irritation was evident as this questioning began to feel like an interrogation. "Enough already. That's what I've been telling you. What are you trying to ask?" Rita interjected sharply, and my mother-in-law nodded in agreement. I caught Russell's eye and gave him a signal. Receiving my cue, Russell adjusted his glasses and nodded affirmatively to me. This was his way of giving the green light, and I was about to reveal a significant fact to my in-laws. "That's an interesting story, but it seems a bit off. Actually, hospital surveillance cameras recorded you forcing Bradley to write the will." As I spoke, I pulled out my laptop from my bag and inserted a USB drive provided by the hospital into the computer port. Bradley had confided in Russell that he was coerced into writing the will. We informed the hospital of this fact, and they were cooperative, providing us with the surveillance footage. I quickly downloaded the data and displayed the video on the screen. "We'd be in trouble if you died, and the inheritance didn't come through," my mother-in-law could be heard saying in a threatening tone as she coerced Bradley to write the will. The footage clearly showed her pressuring Bradley to write the will, with Marcus and Rita also present and involved. "If you don't want anything bad to happen to your wife, just write the will quietly," they could be heard urging Bradley in the video. "Hey, Bradley, just sign this and nothing will happen to her. So don't worry." This video was taken 3 days before Bradley left the hospital. My in-laws were questioning Bradley about the progression of his cancer to secure the inheritance. "No, it's not like that. It was just a joke that went too far. Really, I saw a drama before going to the hospital where the villain looked so cool. I just imitated it without thinking. I didn't mean it seriously. Please forgive us." As the situation turned against them, they hastily began to make excuses. Their words only fueled my anger further, and I sighed at their unsightly demeanor. If you had admitted it honestly, it would have been one thing, but trying to hide it clearly shows intent. "Russell, can we apply charges of extortion based on this?" "Absolutely. The statements provide sufficient evidence." He smiled broadly as he picked up the voice recorder. Marcus and Rita, realizing they had forgotten about the voice recorder, showed their astonishment. "That means, including compensation for the victim, we will be filing for damages against all of you." "This can't be true. Wait a minute, Hazel." "It was only Mom who made him sign. We were just watching. We didn't force him to sign anything. Rita desperately tried to distance herself from the responsibility. This led to an unpleasant argument between my mother-in-law, Marcus, and Rita. It was you two who offered to help get the will written, wasn't it? You said you would handle it properly. Mom, we were just watching. You were the ones rushing Bradley to write it quickly. That was because Bradley's medical appointment was approaching. It wasn't about rushing the will. There just wasn't much time, and we thought it should be done before Hazel arrived. It seemed they might have been advancing their plan while I was not around. Rita continued to provide more testimony, but in the heat of the argument, she seemed unaware of the significance of her own statements. The quarrel was so intense, it made me want to cover my ears. Meanwhile, the children, who had been playing behind the scenes, seemed to notice the commotion and gathered around us all at once. Among them was a child as young as 2 years old. The anxiety in the children's eyes was evident. The children were not at fault. I understood that much. Therefore, I quickly called over my eldest nephew, a 5th grader, and guided the children to another room so they wouldn't have to witness the unsightly fight among the adults. He couldn't grasp what was happening, but he took his brother and sister to the room as instructed. Once the children had left, I calmly criticized the 3 adults. Isn't this shameful? What kind of parents are you? What are you talking about, denying your own responsibilities and blaming each other in front of the children? Don't you think it's pathetic? You're just trying to escape responsibility. Upon hearing my words, Rita suddenly remembered the children who had left, and she showed a remorseful attitude in front of me. I truly am sorry. I acknowledge everything, not just the threats. Please forgive us. Marcus and his mother also quickly apologized next to Rita, trying to gain some forgiveness. We need to support our children, so please help us with the financial part. I also don't know how I'll manage from now on. If we are charged with damages, we're done for. Please overlook this. If there is a sin, I will atone for it. They were begging for forgiveness while crying. However, their attitude only fueled my anger further. In the end, all you think about is yourselves and money. I can't sense any real remorse from you. That's not the intent. It's just that we're financially strained, and we wanted you to understand our situation. Do you realize that saying such things just sounds like you're making excuses? Caught by my words, Marcus involuntarily fell silent. His mother and Rita likely felt the same. Without giving them a chance to apologize further, I threw even harsher words at them. I have no intention of forgiving you. If you truly are concerned about your children, you should be looking to increase your work to repay your debts. Isn't everything that happened a result of what you did to Bradley? It's all your fault. Yet why should I forgive you? It's unreasonable. They were left speechless with no room to argue. If you understand, then please leave. This house is important to me, and I have no intention of living with you. Hazel, please forgive us. We were wrong. Hazel, please help us. They begged for forgiveness, but I coldly refused them. If you say another word, I'll call the police. Finally, fearing the threat of the police, they showed signs of panic. They quickly gathered their children and belongings and left the house. Russell and I watched their departure with a cool gaze, and we immediately locked the door after they left. We sighed in relief, finally settling the matter. Afterwards, I asked Russell to promptly initiate the process for claiming damages. He had already prepared everything, and the claims process proceeded smoothly. The 3 were charged $30,000 in damages for coercing Bradley into signing the will. Unable to pay the large sum, they proposed a settlement, but I made no concessions. I will insist on full payment. Because I refused to negotiate, their lives changed significantly. My mother-in-law had to care for 6 children alone from morning to night, and Marcus and Rita were forced into a life of continuous hard work. They sold their house and moved into a cramped apartment, all 9 of them. While they continue to pay the damages, there is no prospect of their lives becoming easier anytime soon. They will continue to live under difficult circumstances, at least until the youngest child becomes an adult. Thus, I successfully severed all ties with them. After sorting through our belongings, I still live in the same house while I continue my daily work. Friends from work visit occasionally, so I hardly ever feel lonely. Every day, I stand before Bradley's portrait and continue to talk about daily events to him. This is the last promise I made to you. Even if I fall ill and am taken to the hospital, my daily ritual of talking to you will never cease. On that day, as Bradley neared the end of his life, he shared one final wish with me. It was for me to talk to him daily. I love your voice and our conversations more than anything, so I hope you will keep talking to me every day so that your voice can reach me even in heaven. After he passed away, I solemnly vowed to keep the promise I made to him until the day I depart to join him. I will maintain our bond by never missing a day of talking to him.